Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and tonight I'm going to be talking about one of the key concepts that comes down to us from the spiritual philosophy of Thelema, namely that of true will. There's been a lot of debate and discussion about exactly what true will is. Tonight I'm going to give my own insights, my own opinions on exactly what is true will. So stick around for that. But first, I want to make a quick announcement. In case you missed it, last week I published a video announcing that I have now started YouTube memberships. So if you missed that announcement and you're interested in supporting the channel more, for just $2 US a month, actually slightly less than that, you can become a member to support me further. You get custom emojis, membership badges, and access to my community page. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll include a link in the description for the video where I talk more about memberships and how you can join as a member. But if you see the little join button down at the bottom of the screen, the quickest and easiest way is to just click that. Now onto the video. So true will. Out of all of the kind of concepts that come out of Thelema, for me, really, true will is one of the most elegant and beautiful kind of ideas, and really allows us to think about our place in the universe wisely and profoundly. I've had a complicated relationship with Thelema over the years, but true will as a concept is something which still continues to inspire me and still continues to inform my day-to-day practice on the spiritual path. So if you ask any Thelemite, any Western occultists for a simple definition of true will, they'll probably tell you something along the lines of, it is, the thing that you're meant to be doing in your life. There's a certain thing that everyone is meant to do and nothing else, and if they follow that, they're following their true will. Say an artist's true will is to paint, a writer's true will is to write books, and you just have to find what your true will is and then follow that, and then that is how you find fulfillment and a sense of freedom and accomplishment and a sense of having a place in the universe. It's the one thing that you are meant to do in this world, almost like the thing that you're destined to do, that's really meant for you. As though everybody has a place in the universe, like every star has its orbit, is the way that it's often phrased in Crowley's writing. And once you find that orbit and you stay in it, and you stay in your lane, you might say, in modern parlance, instead of interfering with the orbit of others, that is how we can have a vision of universal harmony. And so we have this vision through the idea of true will, of achieving a harmonious unity in the universe, not by imposing rigid rules to force people to act a certain way and know their place in that sense, but rather by everybody discovering and knowing and following their true nature. Things will work themselves out and we can find harmony that way. A kind of harmony through freedom, where our individual will and exercising our individual will becomes one and the same with exercising the will of the universe, as expressed through us, expressing our will as it was meant to be expressed in our particular life. Now, a lot of people hear about true will and do what thou wilt, even stretching back to Rabelais' writings, where the phrase "do what thou wilt" first appears. And they think of this as a license to do whatever you want, no matter the consequence. That's often the way that it gets couched. And in Rabelais' writings, it was do whatever you want, but there was kind of a caveat that every person in his fictional Abbey of Thelema who adhered to this motto of do what thou wilt was of noble character, such that if they were left to their own devices, they wouldn't act recklessly, but they would just naturally act with virtue. And so it's this idea, if we leave human nature to its own devices, that things will work out. I think understanding the ego, maybe that's a little bit too optimistic when it comes to human nature and understanding human nature, but it's a good idea. And I think even behind selfish or egoic impulses, there is a kind of a twisted virtue, something that gets spoken about a lot in Gnosis in modern times. So there's something authentic that's trying to work itself out, that's trying to find a way of expressing itself in a virtuous way in our nature. And perhaps that is linked to true will as well. But when we attach this idea of true will and doing our true will to the idea of freedom, it leads us to import a lot of ideas into the idea of true will, which perhaps were never meant to be there. There is a sense of freedom and what people define as freedom, which is quite different to that of true will. You see, true will, it's a call to freedom in a sense of absolutely following your true nature without obstruction, but it is also the strictest possible bond, because there is a certain thing that is meant for you and you do only that. So it can actually be quite restrictive in that sense. And so there's a paradox within true will, that the ultimate restriction is linked to the ultimate freedom, that you can't have one without the other. And you can get this idea quite clearly by reading Thelemic texts. It's no great secret, I don't think. When we think about concepts to do with will and exercising the will that we want to in the way that we want to, within the context of Western philosophy, we often think of free will. The idea of free will, which stretches all the way back to classical times, there can be an idea of like an absolute free will, that human beings should be able to and can make any decision that they want to in life. Whereas I think we perhaps overestimate the amount of freedom that our will has. And that's a very uncomfortable thing to explore, because so much of our legal system and our philosophical systems are built upon this premise that human beings have free will, that we can use however we want. And we do, I think that we do have an experience of free will, and we can exercise choice, but perhaps there is some limitation to that choice. And perhaps there is a level of determinism, not that everything is predetermined, but that there are certain things that influence us, that are outside of us and not of our choosing, that shape our character. And Sam Harris, I don't always agree with him. I think he's got some pretty terrible takes on certain political issues, particularly when it comes to foreign policy, and also just vilifying an entire religion. But I think that he does have some pretty interesting things to say about certain philosophical questions, things to do with spirituality and meditation. I quite enjoyed his book Waking Up, which was like a secular take on spiritual practice, and also his work on free will, or the talks that he's given on free will and to what extent it's true versus an illusion. I think is quite challenging but quite useful in understanding the truth behind human will. And he basically comes to the conclusion, which I agree with, that for all intents and purposes, we should treat free will as though it's a real thing. We have an experience of it to some extent. But if you actually look at all of the causal factors that go into shaping a human being and shaping their life and their decisions, there's a lot of things you can predict. Now, I don't think that we live in a purely deterministic universe. I think there must be some kind of choice that we exercise, simply because we live in an indeterminate universe, in this great universal experience that we're having, the laws of physics and so on that's unfolding. The moment you have a phenomenon which is got a probability of exactly 50-50 of manifesting one way or the other, to have just one such 50-50 probability of something happening means there can't possibly be one predetermined outcome. There's always going to be branches, and there's always going to be a choice and a chance that things will work out one way or the other that's random. For example, the spin of an electron, there's an exactly 50-50 chance that it'll be an up spin or a down spin. But having said that, I think there are a lot of really great forces that are acting upon the human world, which, just because there's so much energy behind them, can often be irresistible at any given moment. And perhaps with a great amount of time and effort, we can build up a resistance to them. But we are at the mercy of many forces of the universe, both in our psychology and in the external world. And we have to reckon with that, and we have to reckon with the fact that many of these forces have shaped who we are today, and that's karma. And some of that will be useful to us, some of it will be more of a fetter to our future development. But if we're not free to choose certain things about our life, if it's just something that we are compelled to do, that as a matter of compulsion by something in our nature that we've inherited that we didn't ask for, is that really such a bad thing? Well, just think about it for a moment. Think about, for example, the sort of music that you like. You wouldn't necessarily have made a choice about liking that particular kind of music. Perhaps you fell in with a certain circle of friends and you acquired a taste for certain music. Perhaps your parents played certain music growing up and you were conditioned to find that familiar and gravitate towards that. But the more you investigate it, it was never a choice, really, for you to like certain types of music. If somebody asks you to like Taylor Swift and you don't like her music, you can't just flick a switch and suddenly like it. You can't choose to like something that you don't like. So in that sense, there is no freedom of choice. But if you try and resist what you like, that causes you suffering. If you go with the thing that you do like, with your preference, that is what brings you a sense of joy, and that is in fact what brings you a sense of freedom, even though there's no choice implicit in that freedom necessarily. It's the same with being attracted to somebody. You can't choose who you're attracted to. And if you could, life would probably be a lot easier for people and a lot less filled with heartbreak. But you can't. And so the heart wants what the heart wants. It's not a choice. But to not follow that causes you suffering. And to be able to fulfill that great desire is the ultimate form of joy. So just because there's this different idea of will that revolves around certain people being better suited to certain things does not remove the incredible rapture and joy and freedom that you can gain by following that will. And then oppression, or the thing that prevents that freedom, becomes fetters that block you from doing the thing that you're meant to do. There's always other interests that think that you should be doing something else that's not really suited to you, and that becomes the impingement upon your will. But that's not to say there aren't different paths that we can take as a result of true will. I don't think that there's necessarily... I think one misconception that people have with true will is that there's only one thing you can ever be in your entire life. You get sort of typecast in one role for your entire life. But I don't think that's the case. I think everyone's true will is evolving. I think that, it may be your true will to be a painter one day. It may be your true will to be an astronomer later down the track. One metaphor that Crowley often uses for the idea of true will and a universe of people exercising their true will is like stars or planets in a particular orbit. And that is their orbit. And the orbit represents their true will. And in the classical models of the solar system, we have a planetary body going round and round in a circle, which is a bit like a person who has an interpretation of true will, which is, this is the thing I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life. But we know now, we have a more advanced model of the solar system. We understand that as the solar system is moving through space, it's actually moving up this way as the planets are orbiting. So every planet has like a helix kind of a movement through space. And so we're always spiraling up to the next cycle, to the next thing that we're meant to be doing, that's meant for us at a particular time in this life or in our next incarnation. And so true will is always developing and evolving. Some people might do the same thing their entire lives. Other people, it's not necessarily so. It's different for everybody. And the other thing I would say about true will is it's kind of like, even though I've spoken a lot about choice and whether we have as much choice as we think we do, and what things are determined, what things are just a tendency in us, I think when we do discover what we're really meant to do, it's important for us to reach that conclusion ourselves and for us to choose that for ourselves as part of the process of the unveiling of true will. So to take myself for an example, my sort of belief system now incorporates a lot of elements of monotheism, and that's something that I've chosen for myself. But in contrast to that, there was a time where I was part of a monotheistic faith and it wasn't my choice. It was forced upon me. And I was told that this is how I have to be or I'm going to hell. So, but this is something that was always meant for me. It's something that was always suited to my nature, this particular form of religion. But the difference is, in one instance, early in my life, it was forced upon me. And in another instance, it was a choice that I made after deep contemplation and reflection. So even if something is our true will, we have to still choose it. True will, I think, is really connected to the concept of effortless action, which is something we see a lot in Zen Buddhism as well. And the Taoist kind of religious philosophy. You know, you've got the idea of the Tao, which is the flow, the flow of life and the flow of the world. And everything is in a state of oneness, but it's a oneness where everything is kind of flowing into everything else. And there's this dance of yin and yang energies in the flow. And that's the oneness and that's the Tao. And that's almost like the image of divinity within Taoism. And that is a universal principle, but it's reflected all the way down to the level of the way that human beings behave in day-to-day life. And it even goes down to the level of the types of activity that you do. Are you able to do those activities effortlessly? Are you able to enter a flow state as you do those activities? Or does your mind get in the way? Or is there some internal resistance there? You know, like somebody who's really good at playing guitar, you know, they'll be doing all sorts of stuff, guitar licks and everything, and it looks very complicated. It looks like it takes a lot of effort for them to be able to remember exactly where to put their fingers at any given time. But to the guitarist, the action is effortless. It's like they're an autopilot. It's like their hands know what to do and they don't even have to think about it. When you find something that you're really good at, that you really take to, that you learn easily, and then you do it, it becomes a kind of effortless action. And so by engaging in such effortless action, which really is similar to true will, you're going with the flow of the Tao. And so you are moving in a way that is in harmony with the divine and in harmony with the universe, rather than in conflict with it. There's one other concept that I've encountered over the past few years, which I'd like to share with you. which has also helped me to understand the concept of true will. And that is a Japanese idea. It's the idea of ikigai. So if you're not familiar with the Japanese idea of ikigai, basically what it is it's a concept that can be envisioned by way of a Venn diagram of 4 intersecting circles. There's one circle representing what we enjoy doing. There's another circle representing what we're good at doing, and another circle representing what we can get paid to do, and then another circle that represents what the world needs us to do to improve the world. And at the center of that Venn diagram, the intersection of those 4 circles, that thing, whatever it is our ikigai. It's maybe not necessarily the same as true will, but a similar idea. And I like the way that it incorporates a kind of a moral principle as well of what's good for the world, because that's sometimes missing in Thelema. It tends to be all about, what's good for the individual and for the self-appointed spiritual elite who are exercising their will while everybody else is a slave. But I think within that, though, you could say that following virtue, that following a virtuous action that takes other people into account contributes to your ability to exercise true will, because it creates social harmony, and it means that everybody has a chance to follow their will unimpeded by other people interfering. So that's just some food for thought. One final thought that I will leave you with, which is one of the insights that came to me about true will, is that ultimately, true will is the same for everyone. Ultimately, it's everybody's true will to return to a state of union with the divine. And that involves finding that harmony, finding that flow with the universe as it is made manifest in the phenomenal world, but it also means eventually learning how to separate from phenomena and liberate our consciousness from the world of phenomena, to abide in the pure unconditioned state of divinity and uniting with that pure unconditioned state of divinity. And that is where we find the ultimate freedom and the ultimate joy and the ultimate rapture. So I would, and everything else that we do, every other attempt that we make to fulfill our desire is really just a kind of a first attempt at finding that ultimate fulfillment, which we all must find one day. So I would just put to you all that perhaps our true will ultimately is all the same. We all ultimately have the same true will. And that is an interesting thought. If we're all orienting to the same thing, then what kind of a harmonious union could that create if we're all oriented towards the divine? So those are my thoughts on true will. Those are my insights and opinions into the Thelemic idea of true will. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel to support my work. You can subscribe to me also on Odyssey. And if you want to become a member, please hit that join button down below. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.